All right, welcome to another PAVE virtual panel. Thank you all for joining us for this latest PAVE discussion, All AVs Are Local, North Florida. Our All AVs Are Local series takes a look at enterprising projects different regions of the country are doing to prepare for an AV future. We've profiled Michigan's CAV corridor between Detroit and Ann Arbor, Texas's increase in autonomous logistics, and today we're going to North Florida to examine the use of AVs in public transportation. As a reminder, you'll be able to find the full recording of this panel, as well as our previous panels on our YouTube channel, website at pavecampaign.org, or social media at PaveCampaign. My name is Tabitha Colter, and I'm PAVE's Director of Operations and the moderator for today's panel. Let me take a moment to introduce our guests, and then we'll get started with the conversation. Mike Feldman, the director of the Ultimate Urban Circulator Program, had a last-minute conflict and won't be joining us today, but I'm very confident our other two panelists will be able to give us a great look at the work taking place in North Florida. Our first guest is Nigel Atkinson, automation engineer with the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. Welcome, Nigel. And our second panelist is Clayton Levins, executive director of the nonprofit Smart North Florida. Good to have you here, Clayton.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started with some context about the mobility ecosystem in North Florida. Clayton, your organization, Smart North Florida, is a nonprofit dedicated to enhancing regional quality of life through collaboration and smart technology. Could you maybe help set the scene for us about what's going on with mobility innovation across North Florida, particularly with autonomous vehicles?
Thanks, Tabitha. Yes, happy to do so. And good afternoon, good morning to everybody. A pleasure to be on. Smart North Florida, what we're really working on is the auspices of how we got started is as a smart city, smart regions movement. So our core focuses are on the deployment and piloting of smart technologies, both from startups within our region and outside of our region to better augment, particularly public sector entities, and our usage of an open integrated data exchange to better track the impact of these startups and to better corral the open data environment and our public sector environment in the region are really the core at what we do each and every day. And we focus on a litany of technologies within different industries, but at the core of what we really think of a smart city, smart region is the ability to move people in mobility. And so we prioritize our opportunities to partner with great organizations like the Jacksonville Transportation Authority with respect to mobility, and the work that they're doing in the autonomous vehicle space, I think is paramount to creating a smart region because it's really solving, and their work is solving critical problems related to moving people around in our modern economy. And that's something that we're really passionate about working together with those folks on and really solving that type of problem to create a smart region, which is our ultimate goal in lifting the quality of life of the individuals in it.
Definitely. And Nigel, could you tell us a little bit more about the Jacksonville Transportation Authority? How do AV technologies fit into your missions and goals?
Yeah, sure, Tabitha. Again, thank you for having me, and hello, everyone. So just to kind of go to the question. So the JTA's mission has been to improve economy, environment, and the quality of life by providing safe and reliable, efficient, multimodal transportation services. The JTA has always been like a pillar for the community of Jacksonville for many years. So we've done the work to understand the needs of the community in order to strategically position the company to provide the appropriate services. With considering AVs as a new mode to the service we currently provide enhances the mission even further. So by propelling the JTA to become like more efficient from environmental and operational standpoint, but also increases the safety aspect of a modal service by limiting the human error factors and the reaction times when it comes to the imposing or the transportation efforts. So our CEO, Mr. Ford, invites the concept of innovation into the culture of the JTA to continue to create and develop and solve those problems of the past and new innovative ways to develop the best fitting system for our community.
Great. Yeah, that community improvement is a really important part of this. And Clayton, those projects Nigel was just discussing, are pushing for education and experiencing technology for the public. That public element is a big part of this. And so I'm wondering, how is Smart North Florida working to engage the public in some of your regional projects?
Yeah, it's for us, I think it really starts with data and how are we being open and transparent with this data. I think a lot of, again, going back to the philosophy and concept around what a smart city really is. First of all, for us, a smart city is not any one type of technology in particular. It's about creating an ecosystem that feeds off of itself, starting at the core with data collection and data transparency for every resident of the area. And so where that applies really from a project side is we feel like that by collecting and using data to highlight gaps in communities, to solve critical community-based problems, we can help for policymakers and public sector entities better deploy assets to solve those critical problems that their citizens are facing utilizing technology. I think that's one of the reasons why you see the JTA able to pull in such positive and impactful innovation and investment in the AV space, is because they're really, what they're utilizing this technology for is tackling very critical problems in their community. And so a goal for us is, for instance, as we're working with JTA, is as they're collecting this very robust data from all of the sensors that their technology is collecting, to just where are they going to be positioning these vehicles strategically across. I mean, you have to remember, Jacksonville's one of, if not, I believe is the largest city land-wise across the United States. We're moving across, we're not just moving a lot of people, we're moving across a lot of land. And so not just when we're collecting data from the sensors of the vehicles, but when we're collecting the data of just where do we need to strategically place these assets to solve these critical problems, we feel like from our side, we can better educate the public and show, hey, your dollars are really going to, your taxpayer investment is really going into something that's making a tangible difference. Because sometimes we get caught up with not having, modernized our data sources or not made them easily accessible to the public. We really lose out on the ability to get them to buy into these types of investments. And I think that what JTA is doing is just an integral part of making our region smart and opening the door for citizens across particularly Jacksonville to reap the benefits of the type of innovation that can happen in public sector when you do it right, you do it openly, and you do it with transparent data.
Definitely. Nigel, it looks like you had something to say there too.
No, I was just agreeing with Clayton, and we've done a lot of these things as far as like the research behind it and trying to bring this technology to life to make these multimodal changes to support the whole ecosystem and our whole community in Jacksonville. So I was just basically shaking my head in agreement with Clayton was saying. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, so to Nigel's point and to the investment overall, when you're utilizing, let's just continue, of course, with autonomous vehicles, really, we look at, again, mobility is not just one industry that, from a Smart North Florida perspective, that we're looking at how we can better use data, how we can better use technologies to augment industries. When you start to really look at what the difference that AV can make, it's not just a mobility, checkbox. It's public health. It's again, better economic conditions. It's economic competitiveness. So you start to, again, when you invest in smart components, when you invest in innovation in the public sector side, you solve so many problems for the community, and you open many, many doors outside of just one particular industry cluster. And JTA is at the tip of the iceberg with that. From just mobility alone, it opens the door to so many other opportunities across various industries.
Yeah, Nigel, I know especially one project that JTA is working on is the AV test and learn track that you're using to test and evaluate AV vehicles. Could you tell us about that project a little bit and some takeaways from that project?
Yeah, so the Test and Learn project is really like my baby. And my director, Bill Frazier, we actually both work within that program. And it's a program that's within our automation and innovation division. And it's essentially like the research and development group. And it's not only for AVs, it's actually utilized by, the whole entire JTA. And the Test and Learn program was, we're basically taking like a holistic approach by trying to understand the complete ecosystem of what these AVs need and how they should operate, within we call it the ODD, which is the operation design domain. And, those things can include connected vehicles, ITS infrastructure, your command and control systems, and so on and so on. So our program is like we're reviewing it from an end user standpoint, but also from an operational approach to improve like a better service for the community. And as we look at like the different test concepts that we actually put out on these platforms, we're looking at it from a performance and safety and reliability viewpoint so that we can make sure that everything that we actually touch on these vehicles, we understand it from the end user standpoint and also from an operational standpoint that hasn't been done before. So since JTA will be the very first public entity that's going into this field, we wanted to make sure that we have a great understanding just within this area. So that to me is probably like one of the most important projects that we have going on right now at the JTA, because we support a lot of the JTA and not just within the autonomous vehicle space. We're all about the culture of innovation and being innovative because it's more of a mindset than just bringing technology in, but it's also how can you improve certain processes with new innovative ways that hasn't been done before, or a way that somebody hasn't actually seen it, and to actually increase the effectiveness of certain processes within the whole entirety. So that's one of the that's what I really love about just the project in itself, because it's very impactful. But to the point from an AV perspective, I would say one of the biggest takeaways that we have and that we've been actually encountering is just mainly on the operational side. And one of the things that I actually kind of like try to wrap my head around, and we have these conversations on not the daily, but almost every second nowadays, is how do we look at the viewpoint of these vehicles creating all of this data? How do we appropriately manage this data, right? So we on a day-to-day basis, we're looking at 500 gigabytes, of data that these vehicles can produce. And how do you actually capture this? And what data points are critical? Which ones are not? And how do you parse it? How is the actual architecture of the cloud storage tiered properly? Because when you start thinking about it, if you compound this and you build your fleet out to 12 or 15 vehicles, you're increasing that, exponentially. So being able to get that understanding of how this concept will have an operational impact for the JTA and for any other entity that wants to do it in the future is definitely important.
Absolutely. This is kind of turning away a little bit, but Clayton, I know Smart North Florida helps connect different stakeholders in this space, startup organizations, public sector entities. You do a lot of that connecting work. Could you talk to us about how you make that work to help organizations like JTA with this work they're doing?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with who are we partnering with? And I like to, when we go to work with, because we're working with public agencies like JTA, we're working with large cities like City of St. Augustine, and we're working with small cities like City of Palatka, Florida, City of Keystone Heights, cities that many of you may not have even heard of. And then when we sit down with each of them, we really start to, because they have just such a wide swath of such a big wish list. So we start to really pare down with these folks. What are their, core problem statements that they're trying to solve for? Because at the end of the day, it all starts at the problem statement level. And then when we're able to really assess, on the problem statement side, what would be the most impactful for the needs of that particular city. It's as simple as, tapping into, the venture capital and startup ecosystem networks that we have that, directly address the problems that are in existence for this particular entity. I'll give an example actually that Nigel has been a part of. Yesterday, I contacted them. I was connected with a startup here. They're, I think, based in California. They have folks all over that's specializing in smart remote tire management for fleet vehicles. And so as they start to also funnel into my network, because we try to keep an open environment for folks to contact us and share pitch decks and just, connect us with the solutions sets that they've created, I can easily pick up the phone and call Nigel and say, hey, I've vetted this startup. They have a great solution, something that's worth piloting. And then we go from there into a demo scenario, which is actually one thing that we'll be doing with this startup that I just mentioned here over the next couple of weeks. So it's as simple as that, right? It's as simple as us just keeping our finger on the pulse of the needs of the region and really sitting down, just like it is in any other environment between multi-sector entities, of just really getting to the core of the issue and not beating around the bush, just saying, look, if you had a magic wand to solve these 5 problems, what problems would they be? And then we sit down and we start to hash out, what that looks like, and start sort of planting our flag in the ground as to how we're gonna tackle those issues. So it's, it's not a fancy partnership model. It's just how are we going to get our hands dirty and use technology to solve these problems, because it's more available now than ever. I think for public sector, especially to get involved in. It's just public sector entities don't always have the capacity to go out and look at, completely new industries for startup accessibility. So one of the ways we like to position ourselves, frankly, at Smart North Florida, is think of us as your corporate innovation arm. And that's how we connect with other cities across the board and try to help them, solve their problems. So again, not a super fancy partnership ecosystem, but one that really drives results, because we make, new connections every day and solve real problems.
Definitely. Nigel, a story that caught my attention recently at the JTA Test and Learn track was about the kids from summer camps who got the chance to visit the track. Could you tell us about that experience of showing that technology to kids? Is it different from showing it to adults, or what is that like?
Yes, so that experience is completely different from showing the technology to adults. And what we notice is that they're more naturally like accepting of the technology rather than adults. Adults usually already have like a predetermined view and attitudes towards the technology before they even understand what the actual facts or the technical specifications are on the vehicle. And it's pretty interesting, because the whole idea from just showing the kids this technology is just to create exposure to all of the different age groups, because again, we want to include the community, because everything that we do is for the community and providing like a great service. So as we bring these kids in, we really want to educate them, for one, but they're very well known, and they're used to technology because they grew up in technology. So it's a little bit easier to kind of get them engaged and get them going to try to figure out or understand what this technology can do for them. So they're a little bit more, I would say, open to say, hey, how can I use this technology? Well, if you're going to provide it to me, now let me figure out the benefits that I can get from this, instead of, already having the pre-notion of, well, now you're changing something that I'm so used to having on the daily basis. And it's still just a little bit of difference between the kids and adults, but it's very I would say it's very gratifying, when you just have the kids out there and you're teaching them the new technology, and you're teaching them the things that's coming up that's going to actually benefit them and actually make them more productive throughout their days, and educate them throughout the rest of their lives. So I think it's very fun, and it's very exciting to actually engage these kids and have these different groups come out and have fun and actually, love all the things that they see. They put their hands on, the actual technology. They get to see all of the different tests that we do. Sometimes we have to hone them back in a little bit sometimes, because they get so excited with emotions and they want to go and touch this and touch that, which is just all fine. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm trying to teach you something. But it's all a joy, because we have that opportunity to actually educate these kids that a lot of this technology will be definitely for them in the future.
Definitely. And just kind of talking about, educating people and seeing what's going to happen in the future. The next question I'd like to pose, I'd like to hear both of your input actually, is, what are some first steps you might recommend to other transportation agencies who are looking to build up their own AV smart technology ecosystem? Obviously, North Florida, Jacksonville, JTA, you guys are a little ahead of the curve. So I would love to get your input on what advice you would give to other agencies. Clayton, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Digital infrastructure first, right? It's what is the environment that you're creating from the AV perspective, particularly what is the digital environment that you're creating to make sure that your vehicle is communicating, with the systems in place that you have and the route that it's taking. And Nigel can highlight some more of that as the expert. But what I would recommend is ensure that your digital environment is holistic. Make sure that the data that's coming out, again, you heard Nigel mention in this conversation today that the amount of data that they're receiving with just a small fleet of vehicles that we have already it's astronomically high, and there's so much value in that. But the ability to parse it, to ensure that you're telling the right story, to ensure that it's coming together to provide you with the right amount of the right impact that you're trying to show that these vehicles deliver is critical. So holistic data collection and holistic data coalescence, I think is critical when considering the implementation of smart solutions like autonomous vehicles and others. One thing that we always try to do, even in a piloting scenario, when we have a test study for a startup that comes in to work with a public sector entity, is we're using our open data exchange to better track the results of the data that it's bringing in from that pilot. And then once, hopefully the public sector entity sees value in it, they implement it and scale it across, the community. We're able to generate long-term results to continue to show the payoff of that investment, as well as drive further insights for better community investment for policymakers to have at their disposal. So again, critical is complete digital infrastructure and focusing in on that piece.
Definitely. Nigel?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Clayton. One thing I guess that popped into my mind, actually Clayton touched on it earlier, and it has to do with really understanding like the initial problem, right? That you're trying to solve at hand. So for me, it always goes back to who are you serving, and what are the initial problems that you're trying to solve. So when you're just looking at your transportation system, what is the logistical or the local or the flexibility that you actually need to produce the best service for the customer or the end user, right? So once you're starting to look into those type of things and being able to provide the AV or the smart infrastructure as the solution. You really need to understand from an internal perspective and external. So what your users are experiencing, the needs of them, you need to really understand what the problem is. So from that problem, you can it's easier to produce what that appropriate solution is and be a little bit more direct with it, instead of just just wanting to get inside of this industry of smart infrastructure, because it can solve a lot of problems. It's endless. I mean, nowadays you have computers and PCs that can do anything. You tell it what you want, it gives you the results. But being very specific with what your problem is kind of like the overall overarching thing that you need to prove out your concept.
Definitely. Actually, talking about specifics that can be beneficial there, one area that we work with a lot with PAVE is the ability for AVs to expand mobility options, particularly for communities with disabilities. Nigel, I believe JTA has done some work with individuals with disabilities. Could you touch on that really quickly as just an example of one of those specifics?
Yes, so just from the AV perspective, we actually have an ongoing meet with our ADA board, and we have them come out and actually look at the fleet of vehicles that we have, just to help us out and understand how we can make it more accessible for them. What are the needs and wants of that community, because we want to make sure that we're not just supporting, but we're all inclusive of all the different people, because we service everyone. So we want to make sure that we're all inclusive. So we do have a program that we bring out the community, and they have the capabilities to get on the vehicles, to kind of say what they like about the vehicle, what are some of the things that they notice that we have within our other modes of transportation that is very beneficial for them, that they want to see implemented on the AVs, which we take all of this information back and we digest it, and then we actually go to the manufacturers and tell them, hey, within the next revolution or the rev of your vehicles, we need to be more inclusive and accessible for all of our ADA compliant type customers, right? So that's one of the approaches that we use, just as the test and learn and automation division, to provide support and assistance to all of our ADA compliant customers.
That's great. And Clayton, what lessons about AVs do you think other regions or cities might be able to learn from Jacksonville and this region?
I mean, again, I think it's to put it simply, it kind of goes back to what Nigel said. Technology just for technology's sake does not solve core problems. Yeah. It's really taking an honest look at where your community is and what are the key problems within the mobility context are there, and where AV can apply as a holistic solution for them. Because I think the applicability is it's showing itself to be limitless in a way, and I think there's great opportunity to be had for the future of AV across the board, across the country. JTA is making a great example of that each and every day here, and my hope is just that as other areas of the country look at this as a solution, that again they're looking at it from the context of what are the critical core problems that we're trying to solve for each and every day. Because like Nigel said, you can solve for a lot, so taking those into account is a critical factor.
Absolutely. Well, that actually takes us to the end of our 30 minutes together, but thank you both so much for spending the time. Your insights were super valuable. Thank you, Nigel and Clayton, both.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
And a big thank you to our live audience and those of you who submitted questions in advance. If you'd like to follow up with PAVE or one of the panelists on this topic, reach out to us via our website or reply to your registration email. And as a reminder, we will post the full video recording on our YouTube channel and website later this afternoon. Follow us on any social media at PAVE Campaign to see that as soon as it's released. Thank you all.